Hello everyone, back to today's second video. We're going to have a look at the weather for the next week's 10 days. For today's second video, that will take us to around the 25th of January, and we'll be able to extend out beyond that for the extended GFS and ECM ensembles. We'll have a look at the CFS V2 at the end of the video for the next 4 weeks. Running really late today, sorry about that, so I won't mention anything else. We'll just quickly get through it. So these are the GFS upper air temperature and precipitation ensembles for the next couple of weeks. The red line is the 30-year upper air temperature average. We're at London today at Old Wetter Central. So we're around average today with the upper air temperatures. We're going to go very mild again tomorrow. Then after that, we're going into a colder phase at the end of the week and into weekend. Next week, the upper air temperatures lift up, becoming quite mild, but that will be associated with high pressure. So how much of those mild upper air temperatures we realise on the surface next week remains to be seen, and the exact position of the ridge will be critical. Moving out through the closing days of January, this period just here, we're around average with the upper air temperatures not particularly cold, also not as mild as we have been. Precipitation-wise, more rainfall spikes to come. So this is today's wet weather that we've had in the southeast. Most of that is gone now. More rain to come later tomorrow. Though one final push of really wet, windy weather tomorrow and into tomorrow evening. But then after that, an extended spell of dry weather there from the end of week through weekend and well into next week. It's only late on that those precipitation spikes begin to return as we get towards the latter stages of January. And of course, that's very extended range stuff, so it's unreliable at best. Temperature anomalies from the 15th to the 23rd of January are coming out close to, or maybe a little bit below average. That's certainly the coolest anomaly that we've seen on these maps for quite some time. So it's not a big deviation, but certainly it's a little bit cooler than we've had. Most of northern Europe, though, remains exceptionally mild in weekend from the 15th to 23rd of January, just close to average or a little bit below, maybe, for parts of the UK and for Ireland. Precipitation anomalies are drier than average. This is indicative of high pressure building in. So precipitation anomalies from the 15th to the 23rd of January, drier than average in most parts of the UK and Ireland. France is included in that as well, and much of Central Europe too. This is our 6 o'clock GFS result. Now, as we're speaking, the midday run is updating, but I haven't got time to wait for that to finish updating. It won't be fully updated until after 5 o'clock. I'm already running late, so we're going to stick with 6 o'clock run of the GFS. So Saturday, high pressure's ridging in from off the Atlantic. Here it comes. Big build of high pressure takes us through to the early part of next week. That'll be quite a cold ridge, especially for England and Wales, with risk of frost and fog by the start of next week, night and morning. Will be a bit milder across Scotland, though, with those southwesterlies. That high pressure sticks around. It's quite a big ridge as well, 1,040 to 1,045 millibars. It's going to take some shifting. That high pressure will deliver us a mainly dry but potentially quite chilly, especially for England and Wales, quite chilly or even cold start to next week. The ridge is still bare through to the middle next week. This is Wednesday, 22nd of January, a week's time. Late on next week, that high pressure begins to pull back into the Atlantic, and we start to get low pressure coming back in from the Atlantic. It'll be quite a slow change. So I wouldn't expect much in the way of wet weather even into the second half of next week, but gradually things do start to turn a little bit more unsettled. And so that by the time we get through to day 10, which is Saturday the 25th of January, we're actually looking quite unsettled then. Low pressure is driving in from off the Atlantic. We're back to wet and windy stuff. Not particularly mild, though. The air is actually coming from the North Atlantic with that, so quite cool air is coming off Greenland. Into our extended range of the 6 o'clock GFS run, another little build of high pressure there, around 27th of January. Again, that's within quite cold air as well. And as we get to the end of this GFS run, we finish up pretty flat with winds coming in from west. Just a hint, perhaps, of height rises over Scandinavia. This should be a cooler final week to 10 days of January compared to what we've had through most of the month, particularly if those frosts get going. This is how the GEM is looking. So high pressure again is ridging in from the Atlantic over the weekend, settling us down and turning mainly dry. This high pressure is centred over the top of the country, so it will be quite cold for the early part of next week. The mildest weather is with westerlies around the top of the high coming into northern parts of Scotland. Middle of the week, that high pressure just pulls out to our west a little bit. Probably some sort of front dropping southwards, lifting the temperature a bit and also bringing marine wave cloud. But then the high pressure comes back in as we move up towards day 10. So that's how we look with the GEM at day 10, Saturday 25th January, under high pressure. So again, mainly dry there, especially for England and Wales. Excuse me, and quite cold still there. There's no real push of mild air except over Scotland with those westerly winds, but for most of us actually we're under that ridge of high pressure up to day 10, and so we can expect further frosty nights at very least, and maybe some freezing fog right way through to the end of next week with the GM next week. So move through to U7, and again here comes the high pressure building up from the southwest on Saturday, takes over completely by Sunday. Monday next week we're dominated by 1045 millibar area of high pressure. It's cold for England and Wales, a little bit milder for Scotland and for Northern Ireland. That high pressure then sticks around through to the middle part of next week anyway. The centre is put into the middle of the Atlantic, but it's got enough of an influence to keep us mainly dry and pretty cold up to the middle of next week. Into the second half of next week, only very gradually does that high pressure begin to get eroded. By the time we get through to day 10, we're back into westerlies. But remember, these models are sometimes a bit progressive in breaking down high pressure. So whether we really go back into this westerly or not through the second half next week remains to be seen. If we do, it will turn milder, at least for a while anyway, and rain will return to northern and western parts of the country. But a definite break in the unsettled weather here as we go through the early and middle part of next week anyway. These are the options on the table within the ECM ensembles today for day 10, which is the 25th of January. We have 13 members of the ECM ensembles, including the control and the operational run, that have the above average heights just out to our west, below average heights up to the north, and we're bringing in like a west-northwesterly flow. It's starting to break down. The settled weather is starting to break down, but for England and Wales, we're still closer to that ridge, probably to still be mainly dry up to day 10, but it's more unsettled in the north. 12 members of the ECM ensembles with a mid-Atlantic ridge and an area of above average heights to our east, and that's going to be pulling in quite cold winds potentially from the northwest or the north. 12 members of the ECM ensembles with low pressure centred to the north, bringing in a strong westerly flow. That's a very unsettled option. 8 with high pressure just to our east and also to our west. Below average heights, then 6 just here with deep area below average heights over the top of the country. So a lot of options on the table, and we just get to day 10. And it's all really indicative of the fact of what's going to happen with this high pressure. How quickly will it break down? In 2 weeks' time, these are the options that we've got. 22 members of the ECM ensembles with low pressure to the east, and they're going to be bringing down quite cold winds from the north. 18 with low pressure to our north, high pressure to the south. That's going to be a drier option and milder as winds are in from the west. And then 11 with above average heights in the Atlantic just to our west and southwest, below average heights over Scandinavia. That's a drier option, but potentially a bit on the cool side. Winds could be coming in from the northwest. I don't think we can look beyond day 10, really, with so many options there in terms of what's happening with this ridge. How quickly is it breaking down? I don't think we look much beyond day 10. At the moment. Finally, the CFS-V2, so these are 500 millibar heights broken down to week periods. The first week period takes us from the 15th to the 21st of January. The coming week is dominated by high pressure sitting over a little bit to the east of the country. Should be quite a lot of dry weather on offer, but could be a little bit on the cold side. Winds sort of coming in from an east-south-east direction. I'm not sure the CFS got the exact position of that ridge correct, though. I would expect that to be more centred over the top of the UK. Week 2 is the 22nd, 28th of January. Again, high pressure is dominating, bringing a lot of dry weather, but it could be quite cold with overnight frost and fog certainly possible. Much more seasonable second half of January compared to the first half anyway. Week 3 is 29th of January to the 4th of February. Above average heights still there but weakening below average heights up to the north. On the face of it, that should still be reasonably settled, but it could be a bit transitional. We might be starting to turn more unsettled. And then week 4 is the 5th to the 11th of January. Below average heights coming back from the northwest, more unsettled. Notice high pressure is building strongly to the north of Scandinavia, around Svalbard perhaps, and over towards northern parts of Russia. No indication at this stage that winds will go into the east, but we would need to keep an eye on that to see how that build of pressure is developing as we move further into February. Now, it's quite a big change with the CFS. Temperature anomalies for week 1 from the 15th to 21st of January are suddenly going colder than average. That is presumably down to night frost under the area of high pressure. And week 2 also cold than average, 22nd, 28th of January. It's a very big change on what the CFS has been forecasting for a long time. It could be an outlier, but of course we are expecting increasingly frosty nights over the weekend and into next week. If the nights are very frosty, then of course daytimes at this time of year will struggle to see those temperatures lift up as the sun is still very weak. Week 3 is the 29th of January to the 4th of February, close to average temperatures then, so a bit of a recovery in the temperature starting to take place. Week 4, which is the 5th to the 11th of January, actually goes a little bit milder than average. So big changes on the way. High pressure is coming back, and or high pressure is going to start to assert itself. I'd say coming back because we haven't really had all that much high pressure, though we did have an interlude of higher pressure around Christmas and New Year. But other than that, it's just been continuous low pressure right way back into the early part of the autumn, really. So quite a change on the way. High pressure is going to start to exert its authority. It looks like it could be quite a cold bridge as well, centre very close to the country. So particularly for England and Wales, frosty nights, maybe freezing fog over the weekend and into next week as well. Always a little bit milder around the top of that high across Scotland. And let's get through to the end of next week. We may start to see milder winds extending back in from off the Atlantic. But of course, that's uncertain because there's always quite a bit of doubt about how quickly high pressure breaks down. So for the time being, anyway, for the coming week, let's say, we're going back to higher pressure and drier, but also colder conditions. Right then, so that's it for the video today. It's been very cut down compared to normal. That's because I'm running so late, so sorry about that. We'll be back to normal with all the regular features tomorrow. But that's all for now, though, and thanks for watching.